And that's going to be something that the FDA would absolutely want to know was in place before you got into any type of a production or high level use.
We talked with someone who went through the FDA process about a month ago, and he was telling us about how you have to write about everything, like if something bad happens, this is what you have to do. If it's stop work, like you have to plug it in, like all these like small things. Like, do you have to deal with that with medicine as well?
Oh yeah. So in my industry, there's a rule that if you see anything unexpected in either ongoing animal studies or in human studies, that there's a notification requirement that you have to let the FDA. You have to file a letter to FDA saying, "Hey, this is what happens. Here's what we're doing about it," and get an immediate response. You absolutely have to follow the details of each patient and report any adverse findings as quickly as they become available.
All right.
Now, there's again, I want to just make sure you understand that the conduct of these clinical trials and non-clinical trials that support the clinical trials is federal law. The description of how those trials are conducted, documented, and the reproducibility of the experiments has to be very accurately described and documented. So there is existing federal law that describes the process that you have to go through in order to ensure that everything's done in a standardized, well-documented, and reproducible fashion.
Right.
So just be aware, and that federal law is referred to as either good laboratory practices or good clinical practices. And I would assume that there's a good manufacturing practices that's related to the development of devices. So there are a number of different codes within the federal law that you have to follow to be able to conduct the studies that would be needed.
Okay.
So I'm just going to go back to our paper. You said you skimmed it, I don't know, half an hour back or so. What did you think of it?
What did I think?
Yeah.
Well, I thought it's a clever idea. And I quickly contacted my patent attorney just to make sure that I got it registered before you did. No, I do think it's a clever idea. I think it needs some more fleshing out from the overall business standpoint. Is there a commercial product here? I'll tell you where my mind went was that this type of an approach could have other applications. Take, for example, glucose in diabetic patients. So if you could somehow come up with a way of non-invasively measuring blood glucose such that when it fell down below a certain level, there was a pump that delivered insulin, and patients weren't having to continuously check their blood glucose in order to modify or adjust their dose level. So if you could automate something like that also would have application. I'm sure that others have thought of that, and there may be very significant technical limitations for why that can't happen. But automating the delivery of drugs such that you're not over or underdosing is something that I think is fairly attractive. I can see you.
Oh yeah, we just lost connection.
Okay, I guess we're back.
Yep.
I was saying you smiled when I was talking about that. Maybe you've already thought about regulating blood glucose with insulin.
Yeah, we actually interviewed another guy who developed something pretty much like what you're saying,
Yeah.
and it's a commercially used program right now where you just input the glucose level, and it'll tell how much insulin to pump into somebody's body.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's kind of cool.
Yeah. So that application's kind of been taken care of from what I understand from him. But another application we thought of would maybe be pacemakers, and kind of like how fast they beat, how just the rate, I guess. Because from what I understand, a lot of ones now are just at a constant speed. So.
Yeah. So I guess you would suggest that during sleep that you could slow down the rate, and during exercise you could increase the rate, and that would all be somehow regulated externally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So another good idea. I think ways to automate the delivery of drugs to achieve the desired but not the undesired, either low or high levels, are good thoughts.
And with, I guess, drugs moving in the direction of being automatically given, do you think that, I guess this is an opinion question, do you think that medical personnel will be able to monitor hundreds of these at once? Would that be worthwhile, or do you think we'd want to say that you need to keep nurse assistants, oxygen therapists in the hospital when you're using it?
So again, I'm not sure I got all of your question. I think that the question was was related to how much medical monitoring would need to accompany this type of a device, or whether it's something that patients could be sent home on and it's hassle-free.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if that was the essence of the question, I think that certainly during the clinical development phase, you would have to have a lot of monitoring. And that you'd have to, part of the onus on you as an inventor would be to ensure that the device is safe for going home. In many respects, what you're asking is something similar to prescription drugs that then become over-the-counter drugs. So something that no longer needs physician oversight. And those drugs that become over-the-counter drugs do so only after a long time of clinical experience with their performance and their behavior. So I would think that it would be, you might engineer something in that records the pulse oximetry data as well as the oxygen delivery data over a period of use, so that you could retrospectively query that data, and again use that as a check to make sure that the device is doing what you think it's doing.
You guys? All right. I don't think any of us have a whole lot more.
Well, there's a whole lot of homework I put before you guys. In looking at these FDA websites, I'll warn you that they're not necessarily intuitive. So, what I'll do is when I get a few minutes, I'll just start playing around on the FDA website. It's fda.gov, and just find out how the site is organized relative to devices. For all I know, they may have an entire section devoted to oxygen therapy. So